So in the previous sections, we looked at the physical building of the network, the different topology options that we have, and the way that we can construct the physical infrastructure. Very often though, for customers, the physical is one part of it, but really they want to look at the logical constructs that run on top. An ACI has got some different terminology from traditional networking. So I like to take the terms that we use in ACI and really relate them back to what a customer is really used to within their current infrastructure. The first building block that we have is a tenant. And a tenant is just a space on the network. It's just a configuration place that you've got access to. So for example, in my environment, when I log on, I've got access to my tenant. If somebody else logs on, they've got access to their tenant. So it's a way to break up the network for different functions. You could think of a production network, a pre-production network, a test and dev. All of the different infrastructure runs on the same physical fabric. Customers often get a bit confused about how they should use tenants. And so the way I view it is if they've got VDCs today on their maybe the Nexus 7Ks, or they've got different VRFs for different functions, then start off by thinking that VRF or that VDC is a tenant in ACI speak. So very basic, just to really not cause too much confusion around tenants. We do have a special tenant in ACI, and the special tenant is called the common tenant. And inside the common tenant, everything that I build is accessible by other tenants. And what I mean by that is if I build a VRF, it can be used by other tenants. If I build an EPG or a bridge domain, it can be used by other tenants. So the common one is where we might do some actual configuration and lay down some subnets and VRFs. Or as I say, we can do it inside our own tenant. So if this was my tenant, so I'll just call it a Shaman, what I can do inside my tenant is build a VRF. And a VRF is no different than a VRF on any other piece of networking kit. It's just a logical construct, a logical virtual router that we have inside the network fabric. And when I build a VRF, this VRF is available on every leaf switch across the network. So I build it once in the UI or command line, however I built it, and it's available across the entire fabric. Customers will be used to VRFs. They run them today. The next building block that we have is called a bridge domain, or as I write here, just a BD, a bridge domain. A bridge domain is a logical construct that can either be a layer 2 construct, so like a VLAN if you'd like, or it can contain a subnet, so like a VLAN with a gateway. And this bridge domain is again available across the network. I make it once, it's available across every leaf switch in the fabric. The next building block is what's known as an EPG, or an endpoint group. And that really is a VLAN. So for customers that are thinking, what's an EPG? It's a VLAN. And the way that we would use an EPG, we would look at a switch, an interface, and the VLAN. And that gets you, if you like, into that box. That's the first method. The other method is that we might look at a virtual switch. And again, the VLAN that's backed with, or the VXLAN. And again, that would get us into the EPG box. So the EPG is just a security zone, a little bubble on the network that I connect my server interfaces to, and that's the security zone that they sit in. And now, very different from a traditional network, if I add a second subnet, so a second bridge domain, and a second EPG, over here where my servers are sitting, by default, I can't communicate between these EPGs. So between this EPG here and this one, communication by default is not permitted. I have to explicitly say that I want to allow group 1 to talk to group 2, or optionally I could disable the security completely at the VRF level. But the security is really just an access list. That's the way I describe it to customers. So we put an access list that allows me to talk from group 1 to group 2 to allow that communication. So it really makes your whole network look like one large firewall, because every group of servers now is isolated unless I allow it to talk to something else, unless I put a contract or an access list in place to allow it to talk to something else. And there's one missing bit, there's one missing piece of the puzzle. And the missing piece of the puzzle is what's known as an application profile. So an application profile is basically a collection of these EPGs. So all of these EPGs form the application. So it could be Steve's app, and I've got a web tier, an app tier, and a database tier. But these form the application. And when I mentioned before that customers can use the network configuration to reflect their applications, this is exactly what they're doing. They're going into the UI, they create a folder, and this is the folder for my app profile, and underneath here I have folders that represent the endpoint group, so the groups of servers on the network, and these in turn are mapped to subnets. So it's a very simple way to start constructing things, and when you build it up for customers in this manner, it becomes very easy because it's very logical and it's based on everything that they already know. So we have tenants, that's slightly new, but it's very much like a VDC on a 7K. We've got our VRFs, well, everyone knows what a VRF is. Bridge domains can be layer 2 or layer 3, so kind of think VLANs. And then we're going to take an EPG, take a security container and attach this onto a subnet. And as I mentioned before, the way that you get admitted to that EPG is that we'll look at the incoming switch interface on VLAN or virtual switch VLAN, VXLAN, and that gets you into the secure box. Once you're in that box, to talk to something else, we have an access list that's known as a contract in ACI terminology, and that allows us to make that connectivity to other devices on the network. So we'll look in a bit more detail on the next section how we actually build up, or different methods that we can build up these EPGs and application profiles. But let's look at this in a much neater picture on a slide.